number of victims in Rwandan flood has risen to at least 127, according to Rwandan authorities. Most of the deaths occurred in the western province border, Lake Kivu. At least 8 people died in the southwestern Ugandan district of Kisoro after their homes were buried in a mudslide triggered by torrential rains. The warring parties in Sudan have agreed to a 7-day truce, which started on the 4th of May in a phone conversation with South Sudan's president. Good afternoon, our dear viewers. Welcome to the 1 p.m. news edition with Hazele, OGOIGBE, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa here in the city of Cotonou. Now to the news in detail, starting from the local scene. The government's 2021 to 2026 action program provides for the asphalting and paving of a total of 689 kilometers of urban roads. Now, the first phase, which took into account the paving of 9 communes of Benin for 200 kilometers of road, required approximately 22 billion cefas, which generated the creation of more than 10,500 direct and indirect jobs. For information in the following commentary.
Since 2018, the government of Benin has begun work on the development of urban roads in order to improve the living environment and mobility of the population and facilitate their access to socio-community facilities. The government's 2021 to 2026 action program provides for the asphalting and paving of a total of 689 kilometers of urban roads. The first phase, which took into account the paving of 9 communes of Benin for 200 kilometers of road, required approximately 22 billion francs CFA, which generated the creation of more than 10,500 direct and indirect jobs. But do citizens know the definition of a paved road? These roads, built at great expense, have many advantages, but unfortunately, they are also death traps for the population because of the lack of respect for traffic regulations. Residents and users deserve to be made aware of and educated about good behavior, respect for speed limit signs, and other protection and safety signs posted. Gilbert, who is seen as a driving instructor, he confirms the presence of the signs on these roads and describes them. For a reduction of accidents on paved roads, the state must increase awareness and road control.
The number of victims in Rwanda's flood has risen to at least 127. According to Rwandan authorities, most of the deaths occurred in the western province bordering Lake Kivu.
And this is not the first time that political members...
Le président de la République a toujours été dans la disposition d'esprit de discuter avec nos concitoyens.
The President of the Republic has always reiterated his willingness to discuss with the citizen. He understands the opposition supporters or leaders, and this is not the first time that political members claim to be in opposition. This said, I noted all the subject that was raised by the President at the end of his meeting. In particular, when you speak about the reading of the electoral code to facilitate more competition. What I have noted and what he also noted is that the debate is not even at that level anymore. The agenda of the President was favorable. Last Monday, he received Mr. Nditi. I also note, or I recall as I read earlier, that President Patrice Talon has always been available and willing to receive and discuss with the members of the political party and understood the claims of the opposition. Yes, this is the first time that Mr. Nditi has been in charge of an opposition party since the legislative elections, which has a representative in the National Assembly.
Away from that, crossing over to Rwanda, the number of victims in Rwanda's flood has risen to at least 127 victims. Now, according to Rwandan authorities, most of the deaths occurred in the western province bordering Lake Kivu. More information in the following report.
The number of victims in Rwanda's floods has risen to at least 127. Torrential rains have swept through the western, southern, and northern provinces, destroying homes and causing landslides. According to Rwandan authorities, most of the deaths occurred in the western province bordering Lake Kivu. Rwanda's minister in charge of emergency management, Marie Solange Kayisir, announced that emergency relief was already on the way. In neighboring Uganda, 6 people died in the west of the country when landslides struck their homes after days of torrential rain, according to the local Red Cross. Experts say extreme weather events are happening with increased frequency and intensity due to climate change. Last month, at least 14 people died after heavy rains triggered floods and landslides in southern Ethiopia.
Crossing over to Nigeria, Oyo State, Nigeria has a new passport office. Now, the office located at Oyo Town was inaugurated by the Minister of Interior, Rauf Aregbesola. More information in the following report.
The Interior Minister, Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola, arrived to the venue of the passport office in Oyo Town and was welcomed by the quarter guard of the Nigerian Immigration Service. Mr. Aregbesola was also received by indigenes and eminent personalities in the town, as well as top officials of sister agencies.
Honestly, don't see it as a passport office alone. See it as economic improvement, social development, employment will be provided by citizens of this community.
Nigerian Immigration Service, particularly personnel already deployed to this center, are therefore indebted to Oyo State and Oyo people. I, as the controller in charge of this command, shall ensure that we serve you with the same commitment and patriotism.
The minister in his address stated that the development is aimed at reducing the long waiting periods of applicants and ensure a seamless process, asking applicants to stop patronizing touts who swindle their victims and give excuses of lack of booklets.
Their main excuse for withholding applicants' passport is that there is no booklet. It's a lie. We have enough booklet to meet the needs of Nigerians. Our challenge today is in having enough offices to enroll applicants for data capture. Outside there's no problem.
To the residents of the state, the development means so much to them and will improve their standard of living.
The multiplier effects of the establishment of this post office cannot be quantified now, but we estimate that the investment may generate 6 to 10 times in terms of benefit to the people.
It's a booster for the economy, because it makes the people more mobile and indeed gives them global opportunities in their mobility.
The new passport office is a welcome development for residents of Oyo Town and its environs, who will no longer have to travel long distances before obtaining or renewing their passport booklets.
Lawmakers approved on Tuesday a new version of the anti-gay bill that removes a clause that appeared to criminalize identifying as LGBTQ. Now, the initial version of the bill was widely criticized by the international community. Ugandan lawmaker approved on Tuesday a new version of the country's anti-gay bill that removes a clause that appears to criminalize identifying as LGBTQ. The initial version of the bill was widely criticized by the international community. Once the bill is passed into law, it is the duty of the executive to execute it, and they shall do their part, as the executive stated, the Attorney General of Uganda.
We thank you very much. The bill, once the bill is passed into law, it's the duty of the executive to execute it. and we shall do our part as the executive.
Last month, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni returned the bill back to the parliament asking for changes. The bill in its original version had prescribed life imprisonment for homosexuality and the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality.
I know all of us have faced intimidation out there. You know, people being promised to be denied visas, travel restrictions and bans. But we've been able to withstand that.
Mbayo Esther.
While I was in the US, I challenged the people I met, especially Africans, that we can see their struggle to defend the right to sexual orientation. But I don't see them defend the right of Africa in, say, transfer of technology like the Chinese are doing. The black race is struggling to transfer homosexuality, not technology, to Africa.
Previously, the United States has warned of an economic consequence if the legislation is enacted. While I was in the US, I challenged the people I met, especially Africans, that we can see their struggle to defend the rights to sexual orientation, but I do not see them defend the rights of Africa in, say, the transfer of technology like the Chinese are doing. The black race is struggling to transfer homosexuality, not technology, to Africa, and nobody could answer me, added Matthias Mpunga, Ugandan legislature and leader of the opposition. Homosexuality is already illegal in the East African country under a colonial era law criminalizing sex acts between people of the same gender. Away from that, at least 8 people died in the southwestern Ugandan district of Kisoro after their homes were buried in a mudslide triggered by torrential rains. According to the Ugandan Red Cross, most of those killed were sadly women and children.
At least 8 people died in the southwestern Ugandan district of Kisoro after their homes were buried in a mudslide triggered by torrential rains, the Red Cross said on Wednesday, as emergency workers and local residents shuffled through the mud in search of bodies.
8 people have died, and the root cause is the heavy rainfall, the steep terrain, and the poor agricultural practices.
6 of the 8 people were members of one family whose house got buried due to the landslide. Abel Bizimana, a Kisoro district senior official, said climate change and poor farming and soil management practices were to blame for the landslide. According to the Uganda Red Cross, most of those killed were women and children.
We are grappling with the effects of climate change and poor farming practices. And we don't want to tell lies that things are impossible. You just stand in that hill that you can see. You will be looking at the side of Rwanda and we'll be looking at our side. There will be a total difference between soil management practices, between farming practices, and you will just conclude that for us, we know how to talk, good politics. And we have people who we are massaging even when they are doing wrong things. And when calamities happen like this, we say, oh, it's sorry.
Uganda, like the rest of East Africa, has been experiencing heavy rains. Uganda Red Cross Communications Manager says efforts are underway to provide relief to the affected survivors.
2 pastors based in coastal Kenya have appeared in court over the death of at least 110 of their congregants, and many of whom are believed to have starved to death. Self-proclaimed Pastor Paul Nthenge Mackenzie, who set up the Good News International Church in year 2003, is accused of inciting followers to starve to death in order to meet Jesus, appeared in the dock in Malindi. 2 pastors based in coastal Kenya have appeared in court over the death of at least 110 of their congregants, many of whom are believed to have starved to death. Self-proclaimed Pastor Paul Nthenge Mackenzie, who set up the Good News International Church in 2003, is accused of inciting followers to starve to death in order to meet Jesus. He appeared in the dock in Malindi. He will face terrorism charges over the death of more than 100 people found buried in what has been dubbed the Shakahola Forest Massacre, prosecutors stated. The small whole courtroom was packed with relatives of victims as Mackenzie, dressed in a pink and black jacket and brown trousers, was brought in by about half a dozen police officers along with 8 other defendants. After a brief hearing, the case was moved to the High Court in Kenya's second largest city of Mombasa, where the suspects will face terrorism charges, prosecutor Vivian Mkambanga. There is a court in Mombasa that is gazetted to handle cases under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. Kambanga told the magistrate during the hearing in Malindi, asking for the case to be moved to the High Court. Sadly, more than 100 bodies have been exhumed from dozens of mass graves on his property within Kilifi County. Children are believed to be among the dead, but it is unclear how many, as some of the bodies are in poor condition. Autopsies on 40 of the bodies found on Mackenzie's property revealed that the causes of death range from starvation to strangulation and suffocation. The higher court has authorized Mackenzie's detention until Friday, when an application to hold him for a further 30 days pending terrorism investigations will be heard. His wife, Rhoda Mawo, was arrested on Monday night from a hideout in the coastal town of Mtwapa after weeks on the run. It should be noted that Mackenzie had been charged in 2017 over the death of children at his church. In 2019, he closed the church and moved to a ranch in a forested area of Kilifi County where hundreds of families built houses. One of his followers told the Associated Press that it was at this time that the plan to starve till death in order to meet Jesus was hatched and his followers started dying. Human rights groups had been sounding the alarm for months until April, when police began investigating and mass graves were discovered at the ranch. Currently, police are conducting search and rescue missions on the 800 acres property and at an even bigger ranch nearby. So far, 48 people have been rescued alive and 24 arrested, according to Coastal Regional Commissioner Rhoda Oyancha. In another development, Pastor Ezekiel Odero, whose church is in the same county as Mackenzie, has also appeared in court. Now, he will remain in custody for a further 2 days as investigations continue. Odero was arrested last week in connection to the death of dozens of his congregants at his mega church, which draws thousands of people from across the country. He's also been investigated for his links to Mackenzie. Prosecutors have linked Odero and Mackenzie, saying in court documents that they share a history of business investments, including a television station used to pass radicalized messages to followers. After Mackenzie closed his church in 2019, Odero bought a television channel from him. In his filing to court, Odero said he wanted to strongly disassociate himself from Mackenzie and disagreed with his teachings. His followers trooped in large numbers outside the court on Tuesday, praying for his release. Election monitoring increased as incumbent President Erdogan faces the biggest challenge amidst voting security concerns in his country.
It's busy in the Istanbul office of the non-partisan election monitoring group, Türkiye Gönüllüleri. Staff are recruiting volunteers to make sure they have enough people to cover Turkey's general elections on May 14th.
Now in the 81 cities, we are organizing the system. In each voting area, we are having a Türkiye Gönüllüleri person in each school. We need at least 200,000 people. At the moment, we haven't reached that point yet.
The group trains staff through telephone support, online videos, Zoom and face-to-face meetings. The monitors learn how to collect voting numbers at polling stations and to collect those figures to ensure the official results are accurate.
As a young person, I cannot live the way I demand, I cannot live the way I desire. And that is why I want to protect my vote and ballot box's duty here, because there are many security gaps.
Opinion polls indicate an increasingly tight presidential and parliamentary election. The government says all steps have been taken to ensure a fair vote. Despite this, officials say there are still concerns about voter security. Türkiye Gönüllüleri has recruited a team of lawyers who will help monitor the vote. Volunteers are also being sent to Turkey's earthquake-struck Hatay region.
Those who remained here have concerns, saying, I wonder if our votes will be stolen. I wonder if there will be someone who will protect our votes. As volunteers, we are doing whatever we can to ensure that the election is held in a fair way. We currently have nearly 1,000 volunteers here. We've allocated them to voting stations.
Observers say Tukia Gunuleri, along with other election monitor groups working with political parties, played a key role in helping to ensure 2019 votes were fairly counted in a hotly contested Istanbul mayoral election. The outcome of that poll resulted in Erdogan's party losing its decades-long domination of the city. Officials say the 2019 Istanbul vote has motivated some to watch the polls more closely.
Instead of thinking everything is going to be bad, you have to go to your school or wherever you're voting and follow what people are doing. That's the main idea, actually.
As parties step up their campaigns, some observers say the role of election monitors could be pivotal to the outcome of the polls.
Welcome to the African Newspaper Review on Golfe TV Africa with Hazele OGOIGBE. And today we're going to be starting on the front page of the Front Page Liberia. Now the top story reads, nearly 3 months after the murder of Chalo Musu, the police yet to release any official report or press charges against any perpetrator. Now the question asked is, who's holding up the charges? If you know you're curious about that story, you could check the pages of the Front Page Liberia. Still on the front page, Liberia, endangering Liberia's future. This is on the front page. Now, this story said, sent to jail for sextortion. What does sextortion simply mean? Sextortion simply means that you are you're forcing an individual to actually sleep with you because the person is in a tight corner and the person needs something. Now, if you know you're curious about that, you could check the pages of the front page, Liberia. Away from the front page Liberia, let's cross over to the front page of the Namibian. Now, today on the Namibian, the story reads, the police threatened to kill him. Okanja robbery suspect's family says he didn't deserve to die in a haul of bullets. Now, this is a sad story saying, we sleep in sewage. For more of that story, you can check the front page of the Namibian Sun. Now, crossing away from the Namibian Sun, let's go over to the front page of the Citizen Tanzania. On the front page of the Citizen Tanzania today, the top story reads, while trillions in investment will deliver results. That is on the front page of the Citizen Tanzania. It's saying the government remains optimistic that ongoing initiatives to attract investment in trade, logistics and other key sectors will bear positive results and create hundreds of thousands of jobs. Now, if you've been noticing, you've been following the trend in Tanzania, Tanzania has been putting up structures to bring in investors, because when you have investors in your country, it literally stabilizes the economy. And then, of course, the economy is booming. But there is something that needs to be taken into context. Before you can have investors come into your country, you have to be sure that your country is secure, because the situation where there's insecurity, the tourism sector cannot function, the business sector can also not function, and that is what the president of Tanzania is doing. President Samia is doing her best to make sure Tanzania is a hub of investment. Now, this story says Russia moves direct air links with Tanzania, and below this story says Tulia Axon opens up in wide-ranging interview. If you know you're curious about what Tulia Axon said, then you could check the pages of the Citizen Tanzania. Now, crossing away from the Citizen Tanzania, let's move over to the front page of the Guardian Post Cameroon, touching the stories that are making the rounds in Cameroon today. Now, this story says, reports reveal 10 divisions in northwest and southwest facing food crisis. There's a crisis, an alarming food crisis happening in Cameroon right now. Now, this story says the United States pledges to support press freedom and ensure respect of human rights. How possible is this? Now, that is just me thinking out loud. Now, this story says that Labor Day celebration, Access Bank countries heard urges staff to embrace teamwork. And this one says, Untumfo barrister Ndango Ta lots the Guardian pays for objective reporting. There's nothing as important as a newspaper or a media has been objective in their reporting. Now, crossing over to the front page of The Nation, Malawi. Now, let's see the stories that are making the rounds in Malawi today. Okay, on the front page of The Nation, Malawi, the story reads, blame game on M1 rehab delays. PDDA denies responsibility, says RA flouted procedure. Now, Cyclone Freddy cash donation hit 2.7 billion. If you've forgotten, Cyclone Freddy was one of the deadliest cyclones that happened in Malawi and countries around Malawi. Also, it touched some bits of Kenya, and it led to loss of lives, of properties. And the good thing about it is the donations have reached 2.7 billion. The question is, I hope these donations will actually go into the reason the money was donated, because sometimes you have cases of people donating money and then some government officials sitting on the money or siphoning the money into their pockets. If you know you're curious about that story, you could check the pages of The Nation Malawi. Still on The Nation Malawi, Matonga wins MISA chairperson's race, a national story on pages 3. And thinking that petrol scarcity only happens in Nigeria, this is telling you it happens in other African countries. Petrol scarcity bites consumers and business. Petrol is really important because in Africa, we still run lots of businesses. We have our businesses, we have the generators, we have our cars that work with petrol. So when there's petrol scarcity, it's literally like the economy is on standstill, especially for countries that do not have stable electricity. And dear viewers, this is where I conclude this edition of the 1 p.m. news with Hazele OGOIGBE, coming to you live and direct from Golfe TV Africa. Thanks for tuning in. Join me by 6 p.m. for Vocal Point. Enjoy the rest of your day.